I think you are breaking up. Chad, I don't know if it's only for me. Can everybody hear?
I'm curious. Can you tell us about our next speaker?
He's breaking up for me also. Just
Okay. So, but
Sorry about that.
Can you hear me good?
You sound good to me.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So our next speaker is Becca Kennedy. She has a PhD in human factors psychology. She is the co-founder of Kenason, a UX company in Albany. She leads UX research and strategy with clients local and worldwide. She lives with her husband, 4 cats, and many shelves of books and records. So I see that every talk here is interconnected with the other one. And we didn't arrange anything. It's just a coincidence. So welcome, Becca.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda and Chad and all the organizers for helping things run smoothly. And yes, I do have some connections with other talks within mine, which is always nice. So I can't see the chat, so if anything goes wrong, just feel free to interrupt. But I'll be talking about using deep skills in a small city. And by deep skills, I mean specialized skills. And by small city, I mean maybe the capital region, for example. And I
will make the voice for the chat. So if anything happens in the chat,
okay.
You will be your voice.
No worries. I appreciate that. And I want to start with a little bit of a disclaimer that obviously we are living in strange times. And, you know, for one thing, I want to mention that working in technology, we do have some privileges that other people might not. And I actually first wrote this talk in the weeks immediately before COVID-19 got really bad. And I had expected to share these thoughts at a conference in Bergen, Norway in mid-March, which didn't happen. So everything I'm talking about today does feel a little bit different than it did before. So I wanted to acknowledge that and also mention that I'm only really an expert in my own personal experiences. So I'm not intending to give advice that is, you know, applicable to every person out there, but rather just to start conversations. So given the current pandemic, our tech careers might be changing a little bit. So we might have been reevaluating what's important to us or been thinking about who or what we can help with our skills. Some of us might have even lost our jobs or feel uncertain about our jobs, but you know, I want to remind us that maybe not as drastically, but it's true that our career plans have probably always been changing somewhat. And, you know, this lines up with actually some stuff Jennifer was talking about and making purposeful, intentional decisions. You know, growing up when you're young, sometimes if you're in, you know, a comfortable and safe environment, you have that luxury of dreaming an imaginary, wonderful life that you will have in the future. So you might think at some point you can do it all. So you imagine living, you know, a bunch of different places and traveling a lot and maybe having a bunch of different jobs and maybe having kids and a house, an apartment, or a farm. And as we experience life, of course, we start to make choices, or sometimes choices are made for us. So for example, we may have imagined ourselves living in a big city, but then that ends up not really aligning with the rest of our life. So you might notice that a lot of career advice that exists really focuses on people who live in big cities or those making a move to one, especially for tech careers and especially for specialized tech careers. And this advice assumes that you have some choices, like access to relevant education to develop that specialty, or access to big companies and being able to commute to these companies for internships or entry-level jobs, or those networking events that happen in big cities every night of the week and are huge. I prefer our networking events, which are much smaller and cozier. But the point is that there are a lot more career options in tech if you live in one of those metropolitan hubs that are full of big companies. So to give a little bit of background on my career journey is I'm from this area, but I did move away for a while. So I spent most of my 20s developing some deep knowledge and specialized skills through a PhD program. And the reason I had to move for that is there was no real option locally or regionally to learn about human factor psychology or user experience or any of that human technology interaction stuff that I was really starting to become interested in. So I learned a lot really quickly, and that was great for my career, but the trade-off was that I spent years living somewhere that I didn't actually like very much. And, you know, I lost touch with some people, and, you know, of course there were financial impacts of making very little money as a student, but I realized that these were sacrifices I didn't really want to continue making. So I moved back here. So I've been building my life in Albany since 2014, which I love. I'm very happy here. I love our community. And I've been planting my roots like hard, like this is where I live now. But job prospects were not really great for me here. You know, and it has slowly improved since 2014. But still, there's not really much demand for my skills, even though they're valuable elsewhere. So my solution is that I'm self-employed, which has not been easy. It's taken years to really like feel super successful, not super successful, adequately successful with it. And the way it works is I work remotely a lot of the time. So I do have some local clients and I love them, but I do work with a lot of companies who aren't here, a lot of bigger companies. And I do some travel for work and travel for conferences. And that's how I make it work living where I live. So this is not a talk about remote work, but it does seem like for a lot of us who live outside big cities and have some of those more specialized skills, that remote work may be the answer. And even before COVID-19, remote jobs were becoming common for designers, developers, writers, researchers, anyone, especially in tech, who doesn't need to actually physically report somewhere to get their work done. And I would say, in fact, many of us actually thrive in our own physical spaces. And since the pandemic, of course, remote work has only become more of a conversation. You know, a lot of huge tech companies and small ones are considering staying totally remote after things get relatively back to normal in the world. But working remote has its benefits. So it helps you build kind of a wider network that is different than the kind of network you might be building in your own small city. So you can connect with those other specialists in a way that you might not be able to where you live. And it also sometimes helps you earn an income that matches your expertise a little better than your local area might be able to. So I have some suggestions for taking advantage of remote opportunities if you don't live in a thriving hub. Like I said, the first is remote jobs. So working in tech, there's a good chance you can find remote full-time positions or contractor, part-time, or freelance positions where you can use your skills from wherever you are. You can also create that wider support system. I like using Slack and Twitter for that. There are other places to do that. But you can connect with people all over the world who have the exact same interests as you and learn from one another, and it's wonderful. You can also be a part of national or international organizations or contribute to these national or international publications. So either really as a contributor or a consumer of this information, it's a way of staying on top of whatever's happening in your specialty. And these days you can find a lot of remote conferences, kind of like what we're doing today. Hi. And some of it is born out of the real impossibility of traditional in-person gatherings, but hopefully it's a trend that continues. So it seems like remote work is a really great way to kind of level that playing field regardless of your location. So is that all we need to do? I wouldn't be giving this talk if that's what I thought. I feel a disconnect when I'm doing too much that's focused on companies and partners and things that are not local. So I'm happiest when I'm working locally with other people who are in my, neighborhood, and we're making a difference at home. So I think it's important to participate in the local economy and culture. I think it's important that we help push ourselves forward where we live. So what about your own small city? It's easy to get caught up in bigger remote opportunities, but we should still have some pride in where we live, right? So I believe in taking the things we learn, so those things afforded to us by the remote networks and connections and jobs, and bringing it back to where we live. I also think we can take the unique things about where we live or who we are and share that back with the world to a global audience. And small cities sometimes have trouble kind of attracting people and keeping talent. And that becomes a cycle because we end up maybe leaving our hometown or where we might really want to live for opportunities elsewhere. And then we don't really make things better for ourselves or the people coming up after us. So my suggestions for contributing locally, based on my experience, is figure out what the community cornerstones are for where you live. So within your community, maybe it's education or healthcare or history or tourism or horse racing. What makes your city unique, and how can you lean into that uniqueness? You can, of course, use your skills to assist nonprofits and small organizations, which is something I've been trying to do more and more. At the very least, they probably have websites that need a lot of love, and that's something that we can help with. So you can sometimes offer your tech skills at a discount or free of charge, depending on whether they have a budget, and make a difference for organizations who are making a difference at home. Teaching or mentoring is a huge one. So you can organize presentations, workshops, courses, whatever it is to teach those specialized skills to others in the area, or mentor people who are local and have an interest in your specialty. If it's in your wheelhouse, you can participate in culture initiatives. So by that, I'm talking about like local public art or local magazines to be part of what already exists. Or if there's something you want to exist that doesn't exist yet, you can try sparking something new. So that can be something like a meetup, but it can be something smaller like a book club. Because you never know where those communities might lead or who else might become inspired to do kind of the next good thing. So the point I'm trying to get across is that remote opportunities and technology really open a lot of doors for us. But instead of only relying on connecting with people who are far away, I would encourage us to continue to spark new communities at home, where we can bond and work together and be involved locally. And I think today is a very good example of that, of a bunch of us coming together who don't have the same skills or specialties or maybe interests, but here we are connecting with one another. And last thing I want to say is, in the spirit of sparking something new, I want to make a quick announcement on the launch of a labor of love by myself, Crystal Hinckley, and Sarah Alriad, which is a new organization. It will be the Albany chapter of a global group called Hexagon, or Hexagon UX. So we have been very sidelined by COVID-19. But the Albany chapter of Hexagon will be a community for women and non-binary folks who work in user experience or related areas, including design, development, product management, anyone who's involved with creating things for people to connect and support one another. So we don't have our in-person kickoff meeting scheduled yet. or I should say we don't have it scheduled anymore because it was supposed to be in April. But that's going to be happening. And in the meantime, you can find us on social media very soon to stay in the loop. We're right in the midst of putting it all together, but definitely wanted to share that with you all. And that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for your attention and for hanging out on a beautiful sunny day.
That's so
That was great. No, thank you. We have some questions in the chat, and I want to give people an opportunity to go ahead and place their questions in there. Remember, if you want to ask it out loud, just put some pluses. One of the questions, well, I have one, and then there's another one in here. But my question is, your degree is, what's the title again? What's it called?
Oh, sure, yeah. It's called Human Factors Psychology. And so I'm a psychologist, like first and foremost, who works in UX. So it's all about understanding how people interact with technology or with systems, and then designing better technology and systems for those people.
This sounds like like a more psychology version of human-computer interface. Is that the...
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, cool. The question is, I have a friend who is getting his master's in human systems engineering, but because of COVID-19, the opportunities to intern have become limited, of course. What are some recommendations of groups in your industry to connect with about remote opportunities?
That's a good question. And whoever this is can definitely email me to follow up, and I might be able to think of more things. But the User Experience Professionals Association, UXPA, is a really great resource for, it used to be called the Usability Professionals Association. So it's like, you know, the bigger picture of human-computer interaction and everything surrounding that. They're a good resource. They have a really great mentorship program that I participate in. So that might be a good place to start. I know I really feel for people who are like graduating right now or trying to get internship experience, and a lot of those things are kind of getting cut. So I know it's definitely a challenge, but email me and I'm happy to help out more specifically.
I really enjoyed your talk, Becca, because if I heard the other day that Twitter actually decided after the pandemic to allow their employees to continue to work remote full-time if they wish, and many other companies are moving there. Actually, we needed a pandemic to show that we really can go remote. I was doing remote because I'm an immigrant. I'm born in Romania. I moved in Italy. I moved in the United States, and I used all the remote things that now we are using it. We are giving it for granted. At the time, it was only for personal things. So, I started to work when I was in Italy, remote, traveling all Italy and things like this. And I'm so happy to see that nowadays we can do it comfortably from our house, and we can be productive where is all our ambient. So I totally agree. I totally think it's speech.
Yeah, it's an interesting time.
I have a question in the chat. If you're working from home, put a plus in the chat if you would want to work from home forever. Put a minus in the chat if you're ready to get back to, you know, where your current workspace is. You don't have to. I'm just curious. You know, you'll have to go look and see what I'm putting in the chat.
Be plus all the way. Plus me.
So far, the leaning is going one way so far in the chat. I think not everybody though. We got some people that want to get back. Yes, that's fair. Oh, and a mixed. That's awesome. I got a plus and a minus, right? I feel that. I feel that throughout the day. It's a roller coaster. In the morning, I love it, and then at some point during the day, I love it less, and then I think around the end of the day, I love it.
Because you have your independence. I'm not a morning person, so I like to work until 5 o'clock in the morning and go to sleep when people start to wake up to go to work. So I think remote gives you many, and you can be productive when you are productive. You don't have to wake up 7 o'clock in the morning and sleep in your chair all day long.
Yeah, I agree.
There's one last question that we can squeeze in before we have to move on, and that is, how do you find clients out of the region? You know, especially, yeah.
Yeah. So the way I find clients has been through that network that I've cultivated with other UX consultants who do the same thing I do. So it started by, I was working with local clients and doing what I could do here, but I was getting introduced to like the national, international companies through people who had too much work and couldn't handle it all. So they were looking for someone to help out. So I would come in, and from that, just making more and more connections. And that's how it works for me. Sometimes, depending on if there's like a good Slack group for whatever your industry is, people also share opportunities. If someone's looking for a freelancer or looking for a contractor for something, and that can be a good way to meet people.
And the meetups, many times I saw that people in our group find jobs because they met other people in our group. So it's always a way to get to know the jobs out there and the remote online.
Well, thank you, everyone.
I really enjoyed all the talks today, all interconnected and so nice. So